I'm Steve and welcome to my kitchen. Today I want to demonstrate how to make an American baguette.
Like these, I want you to discard all your thoughts about how much work it is to make baguettes. Using new methods and techniques, with only 10 minutes of work, I will have fresh from the oven baguettes. Before we start, I want to make one point. Bakers have large ovens. We have smaller ovens. We can't bake long baguettes like bakers, but we can bake demi-baguettes which will taste just as delicious.
I've set up my workspace with my utensils and my ingredients.
I'll be using 3 cups flour, 1½ teaspoons salt, 1/4 teaspoon instant yeast, and 12 ounces cool tap water. I'm going to start with the dry ingredients. 3 cups flour. I use the scoop and shake method for measuring flour. I use bread flour, but it's perfectly acceptable to use all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour contains 12% gluten and bread flour contains 14% gluten. While bread flour may, as the package says, be better for bread, either is acceptable. Next, 1½ teaspoon salt. I use everyday table salt. There are a number of no-knead recipes in which the salt varies from 1 to 2 teaspoons, dependent upon your diet. I use a heaping teaspoon to get my teaspoon and a half. And a 1/4 teaspoon instant yeast, sometimes referred to as bread machine yeast. Before we add the wet ingredients, I want to mix the dry ingredients to ensure that the yeast and salt are evenly distributed throughout the flour. Now it's time for the wet ingredients. 12 ounces cool tap water. Next, we'll combine the wet and dry ingredients. There. Note how the dough is beginning to stick to the bowl. It means the ingredients are blended.
That, my dear friends, was the hardest part about making the dough. No mixer, no kneading, no yeast proofing. All we had to do was combine the wet and dry ingredients. All we need to do now is cover the bowl with plastic wrap, leave it on the counter to proof, and Mother Nature will do the kneading for us. I'll see you in 8 hours.
Dough should be proofed for 8 to 24 hours, which gives you a lot of flexibility. You could make the dough in the morning and bake it for your evening meal, or you can make the dough in the evening, bake the next morning, and have fresh from the oven bread for your lunch.
The dough is proof for 8 hours and more than tripled in size. It's time to fold, shape, and proof the dough a second time.
I've set a sheet of parchment paper, about the size of my baking stone, off to the side of my workspace. By making the parchment paper the size of the baking stone, it will help me space the baguettes so that they will fit on the baking stone. Next, I'll dust the workspace with flour and scrape the dough out of the bowl. Its strange nature tells us Mother Nature has done her job. With floured hands, I'm going to lightly pat the dough to flatten. Then, using a bowl scraper, I'll fold the dough over onto itself, forming a ball. I'm going to make 4 baguettes, so I'm going to cut the dough into 4 parts. I'll cut the dough ball in half, form a ball, and cut each in half. Forming a ball each time helps me divide the dough into equal portions. I want to form a long rope, but right now the dough is too elastic, so I'll form each into a long row and set them aside. There. I'm going to rest the dough for 10 minutes. Remember how elastic the dough was? The 10-minute wait allowed the yeast to work and the dough relaxed. Now I can form each into a long rope, the length of the parchment paper. Obviously, I'm not using the sophisticated methods and techniques of a French baker. That's why I refer to these as American baguettes. No-knead dough has a higher moisture content, and I modified my methods and techniques to the wetter dough. The average person will not know the difference. My goal is simple: to put fresh from the oven bread on the table that'll make my guests go wow. And they're ready to proof. I've placed the dough on the parchment paper and covered it with a flour sack towel to proof. Before I leave the kitchen, I'll prep the oven. I've positioned the rack in the lower part of the oven and inserted the baking stone. I do it in advance so I don't forget. I'm going to proof the dough for an hour and a half, and I want to preheat the oven for half an hour, so I'm setting the timer for 1 hour. Dough should be proofed for 1 to 2 hours. It's been 1 hour, and I'm setting the oven to 450 degrees. Tile baking stones come to temperature faster than cast iron Dutch ovens, so I can start baking as soon as the oven comes to temperature.
The dough has been proofing for over an hour and the oven has come to temperature. It's time to bake the bread.
Anytime I bake no-knead bread on a baking stone, I baste it. So I'm going to start by making an egg wash. 1 egg with 1 to 2 tablespoons of water, which I'll whip with a fork and brush onto the baguettes. I use the eggshell to measure the water. You don't have to be exact. The purpose of the water is to dilute the egg and make it easier to baste. Next, I'll score the dough with the scissors. I'll slide the pizza paddle under the parchment paper and slide it into the oven on the baking stone. I'm setting the timer for 15 minutes. I'll see you then.
It's been 15 minutes. The baguettes are ready. Let's take a look.
Here they are. What do you think? You'll find the American baguette to be very versatile. Today I'll be making a torpedo sandwich, and the bread came out of the oven only 15 minutes ago. That is what I call fresh. I have a variety of videos demonstrating no-knead breads as smart and easy recipes. You may want to take a look at my YouTube channel. It's free. Just click on the Artisan Bread with Steve tab above this screen.